Fact 12. Another factor which distinguishes Stolpen cars from the rest of the train is that they do not know where their train is going and at what station they will disembark. After all, they don't have tickets, and they don't read the route signs on cars. In Moscow, they sometimes load them on so far from the station's platform that even the Muscovites among them don't know which of the 8 Moscow stations they are at. For several hours, the prisoners sit all squeezed together in the stench while they wait for a switching engine. After finally it comes and takes the car to the already made-up train. If it is summertime, the train's loudspeakers can be heard. Moscow to UFA, departing from track 3. Moscow to Tashkent, still loading at platform 1. That means it's the Kazan station, and those who know the geography of the archipelago are now explaining to their comrades that Vorkuta and Peshora are out. They leave from Yaroslavo station, and the Kirov and Gorky camps are out too. They never send people from Moscow to Belarusia or Ukraine or the Caucasus. Anyway, they have no room there even for their own. Let's listen some more. The Ufa train has left and ours hasn't moved. The Tashkent train has started and we're still the Moscow to Novosibirsk train departing. All those seeing passengers off disembark. All passengers show their ticket. We have started. We have started our train. And what does that prove? Nothing so far. The Middle Volga area is still open, and the South Urals and Kazakhstan and Duzhezkazgan copper mines, and Tashev with its factory for creosoting railroad ties, where, let's say, creosote penetrates the skin and bones, and its vapors fill the lungs, and that's death. And Siberia is still open to us, all the way to Sovetskaya Gava, the Kolyma and Norilsk. And if it is winter time, the cars batten down, and the loudspeakers are inaudible. If the convoy guards obey their regulations, then you'll hear nary a whisper from them about the route either. And thus we set out, and entangled in other bodies, fall asleep to the clacking of the wheels without knowing whether we will see forest or step through the wide window tomorrow, through that window in the corridor. From the middle shelf through the grating, the corridor, the 2 window panes, and still another grating, you can still see some tweaking tracks and a piece of open space hardly by the train. If the window panes have not frosted over, you can sometimes even read the names of the stations. Some Avasino or Undal. Where are these stations? No one in the compartment knows. Sometimes you can judge from the sun whether you are being taken north or east, or at some place, whether called Tufanova. They might shove some dilapidated non-political offender in your compartment. He would tell you that he was being taken from Danilov, to Danilov to be tried, and was scared he'd get a couple of years. In this way, you'd find out that you've gone through Yaroslavo at night, that night, which meant that the first transit prison on your route would be Vologda. and some know-it-alls in the compartment would savor gloomily the famous flourish dressing of the ode of the Volgata. The Vologda convoy guards don't joke. But even after figuring out the general direction, we still haven't really found out anything. Transit prison flying clusters on the route, and you could be shunted off to one side or another from any one of them. We don't fancy Ukta, nor Ita, nor Vorkuta. But do you think that construction project 501, a railroad in the tundra crossing northern Siberia, is any sweeter? It is worse than any of them. 5 years after the war, when the waves of prisoners had finally settled within the river banks, or perhaps they had nearly expanded the MVD's staffs, the ministry sorted out the millions of piles of cases and started sending along with each sentenced prisoner a sealed envelope that contained his case file, and visible through a slot in the envelope, his route and destination inserted from the convoy, and the convoy wasn't supposed to know anything more than that, because of the contents of the file might have a corrupting influence. So then, if you were lying on the middle bunk, and the sergeant stopped right next to you, and you could read upside down, you might be fast enough to read that someone was being taken to the Kinaj Pagoth, and that's where you were being sent to Kargopol. So now there would be more worries. What was Kargopol camp? Who had ever heard of it? What kind of general assignment work did they have there? There did exist general assignment work which was fatal, and some that was not that bad. Was this a death camp or not? And then, how had you failed to let your family know in the hurry of leaving? And they thought you were still in this Stalino Gorsk camp near Tula. If you were very nervous about this and very inventive, you might succeed in solving that problem too. You might find someone with a piece of pencil lead 1/2 inch long and a piece of crumpled paper, making sure the convoy doesn't see you from the corridor. You are forbidden to lie with your feet towards the corridor. Your head has to be in that direction, hunched over and facing the opposite direction. You write your family between lurches of the car, and you have suddenly been taken from where you were and are being sent somewhere else, and you might be able to send only one letter a year from your new destination. So let them be prepared for this eventuality. You have to fold your letter into a triangle and carry it to the toilet in the hope of a lucky break. They might just take you there while approaching a station or just passing a station, and the convoy guard on the platform might get careless, and you can quickly press down on the flush pedal and, using your body as a shield, throw the letter into the hole. It will get wet and soiled, but it might fall right through and land between the rails, or it might even get through dry, and the draft beneath the car will catch and roll it, and it will fall under the wheels or miss them and land on the downward slope of the embankment. Perhaps it will lie there until it rains, until it snows, until it disintegrates, but perhaps a human hand will pick it up, and if this person isn't a stickler for the party line, he will make the address legible. He will straighten out the letters, or perhaps put it in an envelope, and perhaps the letter will even reach its destination. Sometimes such letters do arrive. Postage due, half-blurred, washed out, crumpled, but carrying clearly defined a splash of green. But it is better still to stop as soon as possible being a sucker. That ridiculous greenhorn, that prey, that victim, the chances are 95 out of 100 that your letter won't get there. But even if it does, it will bring no happiness to your home, and you won't be measuring your life and breath by hours and days once you have entered this epic country. Arrivals and departures here are separated by decades, by a quarter century. You will never return to your former world, and the sooner you get used to being without your near and dear ones, and the sooner they get used to being without you, the better it will be, and the easier. And keep as few things as possible, so that you don't have to fear for them. Don't take it as a suitcase for the convoy guard to crush at the door of the car when there are 25 people in a compartment. What else could he figure out to do with it? And don't wear new boots, and don't wear fashionable Oxfords, and don't wear a woolen suit. These things are going to be stolen, taken away, swept aside, or switched to either in the stolen car or in the Black Maria or in the transit prison. Give them up without a struggle, because otherwise the humiliation will poison your heart. They will take them away from you in a fight, and trying to hold on to your property will only leave you with a bloodied mouth. All those brazen snouts, those jeering manners, those two-legged dregs are repulsive to you, but by owning things and trembling about their feet, aren't you forfeiting the rare opportunity of observing and understanding? And do you think that the freebooters, the pirates, and the great privateers, painted in such lively colors by Gibling and GULag, were not simply the same these same these same thieves? That's just what they were. Fascinating and romantic literary portraits. Why are they so repulsive to you here? Understand them too. To them, prison is their native home, no matter how fondly the government treats them, no matter how it softens their punishments, no matter how often it amnesties them, their inner destiny brings them back again and again. Was not the first word in the legislation of the archipelago for them? In our country, the right to own private property was at one time just as effectively banished out in freedom too. And then those who had banished it began to enjoy possessing things, so why should it be tolerated in prison? You were too slow about it. You didn't eat up your fat bacon, you didn't share your sugar and tobacco with your friends, and now the thieves empty your bindle in order to correct your moral error, having given you their pitiful, worn-out boots in exchange for your fashionable ones, their soiled coveralls in return for your sweater. They won't keep these things for long. Your boots are merely something to lose and win back 5 times at cards, and they'll hawk your sweater the very next day for a liter of vodka and a round of salami. They too will have nothing left for them in one day's time, just like you. This is the principle of the second law of thermodynamics. All differences tend to level out, to disappear. Own nothing, possess nothing. Buddha and Christ taught us this, and the Stoics and the Cynics. Greedy though we are, why can't we seem to grasp that simple teaching? Can't we understand that with property we destroy our soul? So let the herring keep warm in your pocket until you get to the transit prison, rather than beg for someone to drink it here, for something to drink here. And did they give us a 2-day supply of bread and sugar? In that case, eat it in one sitting. Then no one will steal it from you, and you won't have to worry about it, and you'll be free as a bird in heaven. Own only what you can always carry with you, knowing no languages, no countries, no people. Let your memory be your travel bag. Use your memory. Use your memory. It is those bitter seeds alone which might sprout and grow someday. Look around you. There are people around you. Maybe you will remember one of them all your life and later eat your heart out because you didn't make use of the opportunity to ask him questions. And the less you talk, the more you'll hear. Thin strands of human lives stretch from island to island of the archipelago. They intertwine, touch one another for one night only, in just such a clicking, clacking, half-dark car as this, and then separate once and for all. Put your ear to their quiet humming and the steady clickety-clack beneath the car. After all, it is the spinning wheel of life that is clicking and clacking away there. Beautiful. It's beautiful paragraph. What strange stories you can hear. What things you will laugh at. Now that fast-moving little Frenchman over there near the grating. Why does he keep twisting around? What is he so surprised at? Explain things to him. And you can ask him at the same time how he happened to land here. So you found someone who knows French. And you learned that he is Max Santerre, a French soldier. And he used to be just as alert and curious out in freedom when he stood fronts. They told him politely to stop hanging around the transit point for Russian repatriates. But he kept going anyway, and the Russians invited him to have a drink with them. And from a certain moment after that he remembers nothing. He came to on the floor of an airplane to find himself dressed in a Red Army man's field shirt and breeches, with the boots of a convoy guard looming over him. They told him he was sentenced to 10 years in camp, but that, of course, as he very clearly understood, was just a nasty joke, wasn't it? And everything would be cleared up? Oh yes, it would be cleared up, dear fellow, just wait. Well, there was nothing to be surprised at in such cases. In 1945-46, that particular story was Franco-Russian. And here is one which is Russo-French. No, really just pure Russian, because no one but a Russian would play this kind of trick. Throughout our history, there have been people who just couldn't be contained, like Menshikov in Berezova in Surkov's painting. Now take Ivan Kovalchenko, average wiry, and yet he couldn't be contained either, because he was a stalwart fellow with a healthy countenance. But the devil threw in a bit of vodka for good measure. He would talk about himself quite willingly, and laugh at himself too. Such stories as his are a treasure. They are meant to be heard. True, it took a long time to figure out why he had been arrested and why he was considered a political, but there's no real need to make a fetish of the category political either. Does it matter a damn what rate they haul you in with? As everyone knows very well, the Germans were preparing for chemical warfare, and we weren't. Therefore, it was most unfortunate that because some of the dunderheads in the quartermaster's department, we left whole stacks of mustard gas bombs in a certain airdrome when we fled the Kuban, and the Germans could have turned this fact into an international scandal. At that point, Senior Lieutenant Kovalchenko, a native of Krasnodar, was assigned 20 parachutists to drop behind the German lines and to bury all those individual bombs. Those hearing this story would have already guessed how it ends, or yawning, but he was taken prisoner, and he has now become a traitor to the motherland. Nothing at all like that. Kovalchenko carried out his assignment brilliantly and returned to the front with his entire complement of men, having lost no one, and was nominated to receive the Order of Hero of the Soviet Union. But it takes a month or two for the official nomination to be confirmed, and what if you can't be contained within that hero of the Soviet Union either? Heroes are awarded to quiet boys who are models of military and political preparedness. But what if your soul is afire, and you want to drink, and there isn't anything to drink? And why, if you're a hero of the whole Union, are the rats being so stingy as to refuse you an extra liter of vodka? And Ivan Kovachenko mounted his horse, and even though it's true that he had never heard of Caligula, he rode his horse upstairs to the second floor to see the city's military commissar, the commandant. Come on now, issue me some vodka. He figured this would be more imposing, more in the style of a hero, and harder to turn down. Did they arrest him for that? No, of course not. But his award was reduced from hero to the Order of the Red Banner. Kovachenko had a large thirst, and vodka wasn't always available, and so he had to be inventive. In Poland, he had gone in and prevented the Germans from blowing up a certain bridge, and he got the feeling this bridge really belonged to him. And so for a time being, before our commandant's headquarters arrived, he exacted payment from the Poles for crossing the bridge. After all, without me, you wouldn't have this bridge, you pests. He collected tolls for a whole day for vodka and then got bored with it, and this wasn't in any case a place for him to stick around. So Captain Kovachenko offered the nearby Poles his equitable solution, that they buy the bridge from him. But was he arrested for this too? No. Yeah, he didn't ask very much for it, but the Poles protested and refused. Pan Captain abandoned the bridge. Abandon the bridge. All right, then, to hell with you. Take your bridge and cross it for nothing. In 1949, he was chief of staff of a parachute regiment in Polotsk. Major Kovachenko was very much disliked by the political branch of the division because he had failed the political indoctrination course. He had once asked them to recommend him for admission to the military academy, but when they gave him the recommendation, he took one look at it and threw it back across the table at them. What kind of recommendation? With that kind of recommendation, the place for me to go is not to the academy, but to the Banderovsky, the Ukrainian nationalist rebels. Was he arrested for that? He might very well have gotten a tenner for it, but he got away with it. At that point, on top of all the rest, it turned out that he had given one of his men unwarranted leave, and then he himself drove a truck at breakneck speed while drunk and wrecked it. And so they gave him 10 days in the guardhouse. However, his own men, who loved him with absolute devotion, were the guards, and they let him out of the guardhouse to go and have fun in the village. So he could have been patient through that guardhouse stretch too, but the political branch began to threaten him with trial. Now that threat shocked and insulted Kovachenko. It meant a burning bomb for them who need you, for one lousy 1.5-ton truck off to prison with you. Crawled out of the window at night, he bent over the Dvina River where a friend's motorboat was hidden, and off he went in it. And it turned out that he wasn't just one more drunk with a short memory. He wanted to avenge himself for everything the political branch had done to him. And in Lithuania, he left his boat and went to the Lithuanians, saying, "Brother, take me to your partisans. Accept me and you won't be sorry. We'll twist their tails." But the Lithuanians decided he was being planted on them. Ivan had a letter of credit sewn in his clothes. He got a ticket to the Kuban. However, en route to Moscow, he got very drunk in a restaurant. Consequently, he squinched up his eye at Moscow as they were leaving the station and told the taxi driver, "Take me to an embassy." "Which one?" "Who the hell cares? Anyone." And the driver took him to one. "Which one was that?" "The French." "All right." Perhaps his thoughts got mixed up, and his original intentions in going to an embassy had changed into something else, but his cleverness and strength had in no wise lapsed. Without alerting the policeman at the embassy entrance, he went quietly down the side street and climbed to the top of a smooth wall, double a man's height. In the embassy yard it was easier. No one discovered or detained him, and he went on inside. walked through one room, then another, and he saw a table set. There were many things on the table, but what astonished him most was the pears. He felt a yearn for them, and he stuffed all the pockets in his field jacket and trousers with them. At that moment, the members of the household came in to dine. Kovachenko began to attack them and shouted them before they could begin on him. "You Frenchmen!" According to him, France hadn't done anything good for the last century. Why don't you start a revolution? Why are you trying to get de Gaulle into power? And you want us to send our Kuban wheat to you? It's a no-go. Who are you? Where did you come from? The French were astounded, immediately adopting the right approach. Kovachenko kept his wits about him, a major of the MGB. The French were frightened. But even so, you're not supposed to burst in here. What is your business here? Boink you in the mouth. Kovachenko bellowed at them straight from the heart, and after playing the hoodlum for them a while longer, he noticed in the next room they were already telephoning about him. He was still sober enough to begin his retreat, but the pears started to fall out of his pockets, and he was pursued by a mocking laughter. And in actual fact, he had enough strength left not only to leave the embassy safe and sound, but to move on. The next morning, he woke up in Kiev station. Was he not planning to go on to the West Ukraine? And they soon picked him up there. During his interrogation, he was beaten by Abakumov personally, and the scars on his back swelled up to a hand's breadth. The minister beat him, of course, not because of the pears and not because of his valid rebuke to the French, but to find out by whom and when he had been recruited. And of course, the prison term they had handed him was 25 years. There are so many such stories, but like every railroad car, the Stolypin falls silent at night there won't be any fish, nor water, nor going to the toilet. And the car is filled then with the steady noise of the wheels, which doesn't in the least break the silence. And if in addition the convoy guard has left the corridor, one can talk quietly from the third compartment from men with the fourth, or women's compartment. A conversation with a woman in prison is quite special. There's something noble about it, even if one talks about articles of the code and prison terms. And such conversation went on all night, and here are the circumstances in which it took place. It was July 1950. There were no passengers in the women's compartment except for one young girl, the daughter of a Moscow doctor, sentenced under Article 5810. There was a big to-do in the men's compartment. The convoy guards began to drill all the sets out of three compartments into two, and don't even ask how many they piled up in there. And then they brought in some offender who was not at all like a convict. In the first place, he hadn't had his head shaved, and his wavy blonde locks, real curls, lay seductively on his big, thoroughbred head. He was young, dignified, and dressed in a British military uniform. He was escorted through the corridor with an air of deference. The convoy itself had been a little awed by the instructions on the envelope containing his case file, and the girl had managed to catch a glimpse of the whole episode, but he himself had not seen her, and how much he regretted that later. From the noise and commotion, she realized that the compartment next to hers had been emptied for him, and it was obvious he was not supposed to communicate with anyone. All the more reason for her to want to talk with him. It wasn't possible in the Stolypin to see from one compartment to another, but when everything was still, you could hear between them, late at night, when things had begun to quiet down. The girl sat on the edge of her bunk, right up against the grating, and called to him quietly, and perhaps she first sang softly. The convoy guard was supposed to punish her for all this, but the guard itself had settled down for the night, and there was no one in the corridor. The stranger heard her and, following her instructions, sat in the same position. They were now sitting with their backs to each other, braced against the same 1-inch partition, and speaking quietly through the grating at the outer edge of the partition. Their heads were as close as if their lips were kissing, but they could neither touch one another nor see one another. Eric Arvid Anderson understood Russian tolerably well by this time, made many mistakes when he spoke it, but in the end could succeed in communicating his thoughts. He told the girl his astonishing story, and we too will hear about it at the Transit Prison Center. She in turn told him the simple story of a Moscow student who had gotten 5810. But Arvid was fascinated. He asked her about Soviet youth and about Soviet life, and what he heard was not at all what he had learned earlier in leftist Western newspapers and from his own official visit here. They talked all night long, and that night everything came together for Arvid. The strange prisoner's car in an alien country, the rhythmic nighttime clicking of the wheels, which always finds an echo in our hearts, and the girl's melodic voice, her whispers, her breath reaching his ear, his very ear, yet he couldn't even look at her. And for a year and a half he hadn't heard a woman's voice. And for the first time through that invisible and probably and of course necessarily beautiful girl, he began to see the real Russia, and the voice of Russia told him the truth all night long. One can learn about a country for the first time this way too, and in the morning he would glimpse Russia's dark straw-thatched roofs through the window, to the sad whispering of his hidden guide. Yes, indeed, all this is Russia. The prisoners on the tracks refusing to voice their complaints, the girl on the other side of the stopping partition, the convoy going off to sleep, pears falling out of pockets, buried bombs, and a horse climbing to the second floor. Thank you for listening. Good night.